What are your crimes, Mark? Yes, what are your crimes, Mark? Did you beat your wife? Did you kick a pup? Well, find your crimes or make it up. Did you laugh in public? That's not nice, and now you'll have to pay your price. So what are your crimes, Mark? What have you done? Oh, it's too late now. Fair game's begun.
My crimes are so bad that I had to go on the lam. So you may not have seen me for a while. Oh, sure, I made an appearance last week, but for God's sakes, I've been hiding out in various lairs, I guess you would call them. But now here I am back at the Worldwide Intergalactic Studios, the headquarters of Xenu TV, where we've got something to broadcast out to the cosmos tonight. And I'm glad you're here for this. Got a bunch of things that I've been working on, things that are lined up, already uploaded, waiting for me to play them here. And I'm also getting closer to having the entire Hammer Attack footage being finished. I think later this week I'll be able to play that. Some of these things take a while to produce, at least the way I do it, because I'm nuts. So I recently said, what would be simple? I've got this edited video with Maria Pia Gardini from the LMT years in standard def video. I'll just upgrade this to 4K. And 3 days later, it finished encoding. So later this week, we'll at least take a look at that. I don't know if we'll watch the entire thing together, but I will release that new extra shiny 4K version of it. So that's something to look forward to. I'd like to thank everybody who's dropping by here for tonight's procedure. Look at this. Oh, let me put on the glasses here. These are special 3D specs that allow me to see through the cosmos over to who is watching us. These operate similar to the old romper room. You hold up I don't know, it was like a little mirror or something that the Miss Vicky would hold up, and she'd see Billy and Timmy, and there's little Lisa. And so this works the same way. I can put these magic glasses on, and I can see who's here. Like Lapita. Lapita's waving. She's making it easy for me to spot her. JB808 is here. Hello, JB808. Nice to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Deanna Ross, how about that? Hey, Mark in chat, she says. And let's see. How about this? Gonzalo de Jesus or de Jesus. Hola. Nice to have you here. Lynette G, 49ers fan for life. R.I.P. Lisa. Thank you for coming by to listen to this broadcast we're going to have tonight. Deanna Ross looking right through her romper room mirror right back at me saying, I see Mark, I see Lapita, I see Kelly. And Lynette, did I say hello to Lynette? Yes, I probably did. If not, hello. All right. So thank you. Journey 2020 just popped in as well. Thank you all for joining me here. I've got a bunch of these radio shows that I have been updating. Well, updating meaning I'm cleaning them up. These are things that I put online decades ago that I thought were lost, but with the help of you folks here on this very channel, you got me to the Wayback Machine, and I was able to dig up most of the radio shows that had gone missing. So I'm going through and kind of cleaning up the audio on these, making them sound a little bit better, hopefully a lot better in some cases. And what I'm going to play for you tonight comes from a show that was on the Tampa NPR station, I think, public radio station. It's called Radioactivity, and the host of that show did frequent shows on Scientology. And this one we're going to listen to today is from 1998, and it features two people who would go on to form the Lisa McPherson Trust, along with Bob Minton, the retired international banker who funded the LMT. So Stacy Brooks became the president of the LMT, and Jesse Prince was the vice president. And a year before there was even a thought of forming the LMT, the two of them appeared on this Tampa radio show to talk about the international vigil that was being held in memory of Lisa McPherson by the Fort Harrison Hotel on, well, that would have been December 5th of 1998. And this, I believe, was the day before that they did the show. And, you know, I'm thrilled to be able to keep this stuff alive. I know people are working hard to put together a similar vigil here in Clearwater this year and also in LA. And that's wonderful that people have been inspired by these vigils that were done in the late 90s. And it's a, you know, it's a really wonderful thing to keep her memory alive, keep the story out there, and make sure that, you know, no one else has to suffer through this the way Lisa did. And unfortunately, there are still people who are put on baby watch and still people at risk. Okay. So I'm just checking to see who else might have popped in here. I think that's it. I think we've all gathered. And to you folks who are joining after this, I welcome you to this as well. Let's take a listen to this, shall we? This is from, it's actually from December 3rd, 1998. And that's not what I wanted to do. Let's bring that up here. Oh, it's so simple. Mark, it is a breeze. It is so simple to do this. There we go. Let's give it a shot.
Now I'm happy to welcome Stacy Young and Jesse Prince, both of whom are former members of the Church of Scientology. They've left the church, and they're here this weekend because there are going to be vigils outside the church headquarters in Clearwater as opponents of the Church of Scientology speak out against the church. Stacy and Jesse, welcome to WMNF. Nice to have you here. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
Jesse, let me start with you. How long were you in the church? What did you do in the church?
I was in the Church of Scientology for 16 years. I started out, well, that's a story in and of itself, but I became a staff member here at the church in Florida, in Clearwater, and I was here from the years of 1979 to 1981, at which point I was recruited and promoted for a senior executive position within a Church Corporation and Religious Technology Center, which is the corporation that holds the trademarks of Dianetics and Scientology and licenses other organizations to use its materials.
These are the official church secrets, so to speak, or official church philosophy?
Yeah, it is the writings of L. Ron Hubbard, his technical writings, as well as his policy writings, as well as their confidential secret materials.
How high up did you get in the church hierarchy?
Corporately, I was the second most senior person within the Church of Scientology from the years 1982 to early 1987.
What attracted you to Scientology? What did you find valuable in Scientology?
Well, in the beginning, I was young. I was 21 years old and confused. I guess just as confused as most 21-year-olds are. And, you know, I had an interest in helping people. I had an interest in learning something that would make me an asset to society. And Scientology had many claims of being able to do such a thing.
Stacy Young, let me turn to you. How long were you in the church, and what attracted you to the church originally?
I was in for almost 15 years, from 1975 until 1981. I think I'd have to agree with Jesse. When I first got in, I was 23. It was the mid-70s. Very idealistic times, as you remember. And I felt very strongly that I wanted to do something to help people. I was an idealist and really wanted to feel like I was doing something to change things for the better. And Scientology seemed to offer that possibility and that potential. So I was very excited about getting involved in this organization, about which, of course, I knew very little. And I should have found out much more about it before I got involved. But that was basically how it started for me as well.
How high up, or what did you do while you were there in the Church of Scientology?
Well, the first few years that I was in, again, because I wanted to do something to help people, I learned how to be one of their auditors, which is the term they use for counseling. And I did hundreds and hundreds of hours of auditing on people. And then I moved up to supervising other people who were learning how to do the counseling procedures. So I learned really as much as there was to know about their quote-unquote auditing technology. After that, I did a little stint in their prison camp, which is the rehabilitation project for us. If you see these people around the Fort Harrison Hotel in their black boiler suits running wherever they go, those are people who are on the Clearwater branch of their prison camp, basically.
Why do you call it a prison camp?
Well, because it's basically a political prison. People are sent there for disaffection, for being critical of management, for disagreeing with the way things are being done in one way or another.
By the way, Stacy mentioned the RPFers and the boiler suits. I've been recapturing all of my video and upscaling it, and I did find a lot of video of this one guy that we used to see, painfully thin. He'd be walking the streets of Clearwater in his boiler suit. And I'll dig up some of that for you at some point. In the meantime, let's see. Boom. Kelly says, I sure would love to see Stacy and Jesse come back and speak out. Well, that would be nice. I don't think we're going to hear from either. I know Stacy signed some deal when she and Bob got out from under the thumb of Miscavige. So they have a non-disclosure, or keep your mouth shut settlement that they reached. Not the same for Jesse, but Jesse does not seem to be that interested in speaking out anymore. Did a lot of great work while they were both talking, though.
And they're kept on it until they stop being critical.
What did you
Just
disagree?
as in any political prison, I suppose.
Why were you assigned to this?
I was assigned to it because I refused to work with the leader of Scientology. His name is David Miscavige. I think there was a big article about him in the St. Pete Times recently. Contrary to the way he was portrayed in that article, I found him to be an extremely vicious, very corrupt, very, really fairly psychopathic personality. he really enjoyed degrading people, ridiculing people. He had one staff member get down on his hands and knees and push a pencil down the hall because he was late with the report one afternoon. And he just stood there laughing at him. And I was in a position under him in which I was supposed to be carrying out his orders to treat other people in that way. And I refused to do it. And he got very, very angry at me because I was not agreeing to follow his orders. And finally, one night, he became so angry at me that he took me into an office, locked the door, and screamed at me until I really, I hadn't slept in several days because sleep deprivation is a big part of the way they control people at the higher levels in Scientology management. So I hadn't slept much for about a week. I was feeling very shaky already, and his screaming caused me to feel that I was going to lose my mind if I allowed myself to be subjected to this treatment any longer. So I went into another part of the organization the next morning and announced that I was not going to be able to work with him any longer.
And you were assigned to what you describe as a prison camp.
Well, I was assigned very quickly thereafter. I was up at their secret management compound outside of LA at the time, and at 4 a.m, there was a knock on the door, and 2 guards were at the door and ordered me to pack my clothes and come with them. And so I did that, and I was escorted physically to a van, which drove me down to Los Angeles in the middle of the night until I...
Well, are you saying that you tried to leave this? You out?
To leave very badly, but I could not get out. It wasn't... I was not physically kept from leaving all the time that I was in there. I was kept physically from leaving for about 4 months. I was kept on the 7th floor of there's a big complex in Los Angeles, which used to be the Cedars of Lebanon Hospital. And the RPF was on the 7th floor of that complex at the time. And I was kept under house arrest on the 7th floor for about 4 months during my stay in the RPF until I was able to convince them that I would not leave if they allowed me off of that floor.
Well, how would they prevent you from leaving? What mechanism would they use?
Well, I was under guards. There were guards at the door. I was not allowed to leave. I mean, Jesse had an even worse experience of being held against his will than I did.
Jesse, what was your experience?
Well, in 1976, again in the 70s, when I first got into Scientology, I got in San Francisco, and then I was recruited into the Scientology fraternal organization known as the Sea Organization. I was in the Sea Organization, I guess, for 2.5, maybe 3 months, at which point I was being forced to stay awake and work long hours. I was being paid under $5 a week for working 100 plus hours. And I finally went to them and I said, I'm not doing this. I'm leaving. And they told me, well, no, you're not. And at that point, this same location, Cedars of Lebanon, was fenced in and barbed wire because it had not, I guess the Cedars of Lebanon had moved to a new location and the building was for sale. I was held in that facility, which was surrounded by barbed wire, a barbed wire fence, and patrolled by German Shepherd dogs, as well as other guards. And I was forcefully taken up to the 7th floor of another building in that complex and held there for nearly a year.
How were you held?
2 to 3 people were assigned to guard me all the time in case I ever tried to leave. I was constantly supervised by guards, and there's no access to any telephone, so I was not able to call my family or call the police or do anything. And as I said, this went on for nearly a year.
Did these guards have guns? Or what would have happened had you tried to walk past them?
I would have been stopped. I mean, and that did happen. You know, they hold you down. Basically, they physically hold you down or lock you in a room.
But you have to understand that at the same time, you're being subjected to relentless indoctrination 24 hours a day.
What kind of indoctrination?
Basically, how bad of a person you really are. It kind of starts with the introductory tests that they give a person in coming into Scientology, this Oxford Capacity Analysis Test, which is a 200-question questionnaire, which then is the sum of those answers are graphed on a graph, and you have low points and high points. And on the low points, they explain to you, well, this is really bad and this is really ruining you, and this is why you feel the way you feel now. And, you know, read this Hubbard book. You're made to read the books, whether you want to read them or not. And you participate in the counseling, whether you want to or not. And, you know, after a while, after this continuous indoctrination, one comes to believe that this is the only way through this experience, which is to comply and do what they want you to do.
What about your families? Were your parents still alive? Did you have brothers and sisters? Did you have contact with them?
Yes. My family, my father actually thought I was dead because I wasn't able to contact them or speak to them for over a year. As I said, there was no access to the telephone. Also, Hubbard doesn't let his followers that are on staff watch television or read the newspapers.
Why is that?
Well, I can only assume why it is because he doesn't want them to realize the truth. He doesn't want them to be contacted into the real world and feel a connection, because there is so much against Scientology and people that have been hurt, as came up in the 1979 court case against Scientology, where L. Ron Hubbard's own wife, Mary Sue Hubbard, went to jail for practicing criminal activities against the government and private citizens.
Well, and I have been contacted by many people coming out of Scientology who had discovered the other side of the story from reading the internet. The internet is Scientology's worst nightmare because it's a free flow of information, which is not only positive about Scientology, but also critical about Scientology. And so someone getting into or thinking about getting into this organization now has an opportunity to find out what is actually happening within Scientology. They definitely very much curtail the flow of information so that their indoctrination will work. You know, we've been down picketing in front of the Fort Harrison in honor of Lisa McPherson, who died in 1995 on December 5th. And there are people that see us doing this, and they say things to us which make it very clear to me that they have been told very specific things about me, about Jesse, about the other people that are there that aren't true. And they believe it because they have no way of getting any other information.
Because they're cut off from any sort of other avenue of information?
Absolutely.
Stacey Young and Jesse Prince are our guests today. You're listening to Radioactivity on WMNF. I'm Rob Lorai. We're talking about the Church of Scientology. Stacey and Jesse are two former members of the church, reaching pretty high levels within the church. Jesse, a one-time number 2 or number 3 person in the church hierarchy. Stacey, you worked for Freedom Magazine, and you've described Freedom Magazine and what you did as the propaganda arm of the Church of Scientology. What?
Yeah, we'll get back to that in just a moment. But since there's this little discussion in the comments about Dr. Minkoff. Dr. Minkoff lost his license for a year, and he got it back, unfortunately, much to the distress of the Whitney Mills family, because he was the doctor for Whitney Mills. And he is in court right now over the death of Whitney Mills. She committed suicide, and Dr. Minkoff was right smack dab in the middle of all of that. So that's ongoing now. But it's amazing how these two high-profile deaths here in Clearwater, right smack dab in the center of them is Dr. Minkoff. So Aaron Smith Levitt and I went to a court hearing a few months ago in the Whitney Mills case, where they were trying to say that, hey, Dr. Minkoff really shouldn't be, in trouble here because really there's so many mistakes in this lawsuit that you've got to just throw this out, Your Honor. And the judge said, nope, looks good to me. So that's continuing to go on. I like this from Kelly. Minkoff diagnosing Lyme disease since 1974. Yeah, that's what he said Whitney Mills had. Minkoff paid a relatively small price back after Lisa's death, and we'll see if he's held to a greater account this time. And now, more. Come on, you can do it.
Should have found out much more about it before I got involved.
Uh-oh.
But that was...
I think I went too far.
Known as the Sea Org.
Let me go.
I can only assume
where,
because they're cut off from any sort of other avenue of information.
Absolutely.
Stacey Young and Jesse Prince are our guests today. You're listening to Radioactivity on WMNF. I'm Rob Lorai. We're talking about the Church of Scientology. Stacey and Jesse are two former members of the church, reaching pretty high levels within the church. Jesse, a one-time number 2 or number 3 person in the church hierarchy. Stacey, you worked for Freedom Magazine, and you've described Freedom Magazine and what you did as the propaganda arm of the Church of Scientology. Why do you describe it that way?
Well, because it's a magazine which is produced very specifically to propagate Scientology's worldview to the media, to political figures, to major figures in business, to try to change the minds of those particular people about Scientology and get them to think that Scientology is a good thing. And that's the purpose of the magazine.
Who is the magazine sent to?
It's sent to the media and political figures and major figures in business.
You told me a case in which there was a lawsuit in Portland, and the Church of Scientology was involved in a lawsuit in Portland, and the magazine was used in a very specific way. Tell me that case.
Yeah, there was a woman named Julie Christopherson who was damaged very badly by her experience in Scientology and later sued them for intentional infliction of emotional distress and other damages. And Scientology lost the jury. It was a jury trial, and the jury found Scientology responsible to the tune of $30 million. And this was a terrible, terrible blow to Scientology, not only financially, but also public relations-wise, legally. And so the head of Scientology, David Miscavige, ordered that we produce a special edition of Freedom Magazine, which was basically designed to tell the, quote, true story, unquote, about Julie Christopherson and the various witnesses that had been in that case, whatever. And we were ordered to have it distributed to every single house in Portland. And it cost about $2 million just for that one little public relations propaganda activity.
But how do you know what was in the magazine was propaganda? Why do you say that what you worked on was propaganda?
Well, as you know, regular journalists, when they're doing a story, they make sure that they're telling the truth. They get both sides. They talk to, if they talk to one person who's critical of the subject, then they usually try to talk to another person who's got a different point of view to make sure that they're not just parroting someone's own agenda. The way the Freedom Magazine stories are written is not that way. We were fed information by the intelligence division of Scientology, or ordered to write a story from our seniors or whatever. And if we questioned the point of view that we were ordered to take in the story, we were considered to be disaffected or, in some way suspect of our motivations for doing so.
What happens to people who are disaffected?
They go to the RPF, which is the prison camp.
How many RPFs are there? How many of these?
Well, it's a Sea organization thing. So there's an RPF unit wherever you find a Sea organization unit. In Los Angeles, there's a big one. In Clearwater, there's also one. There's
Europe.
In Europe, in Copenhagen, there's another RPF, and
the UK, there's another one in the UK.
Yeah.
Why did you guys leave? Jesse? What made you leave the Church of Scientology?
Well, it's a very exact reason why I left. There was a point in time where, even after the first 2 years of my Scientological experience, at the end of that imprisonment at that time, I was told it was a big mistake. This should have never happened to you. And I was given several $1,000s and asked to please stay because now you understand what we're doing and to help us along. Well, I did that. And instead of making $3 a week, I was raised to $24 a week. And then I came here where, at Flag, where I made a better income, and I was able to, I went home and I saw my family and I told them that I was okay, and saw my children, saw my brothers and sisters, and, kind of explained whether it was a mix-up in the beginning, but now I'm okay. And then I was drafted to go to the Los Angeles secret location, at which point I learned that the hierarchy of Scientology itself doesn't believe in Scientology, and actually is just like any other major corporation whose main objective is money. But the way the church procures money is through deception, high pressure sales techniques. I mean, even this poor girl that died at the hands of Scientology, Lisa McPherson, was paying X amount of her income every week to the International Association of Scientologists, and she received no services whatsoever. I learned how they pressure people to max out their credit cards, give money, lie to families, get trust funds turned over, and they were just amassing this giant treasure chest of money. They being David Miscavige, Lyman Spurlock, Norman Starkey, a South African fellow that's extremely prejudiced, Marty Rathburn, a person that is over there, intelligence and legal arms, which are criminal to the point that even as I sit here, there are private investigators calling my children, posing as police officers, saying that I am wanted in Denver, Colorado for jumping bail or leaving because I have some kind of legal action going on. And then they're explaining to them things that I did in my life earlier because they've gone through my confidential auditing files and pulled embarrassing things or, things that could cause trouble. And they're spreading it around to my father, my sister, my cousins, my friends, business associates, as we sit here.
So you're saying the harassment goes on now. Stacy, I want to ask you about why you left, but first of all, auditing. Describe what auditing is. When you say that they keep a file on you, what's in that file and what is auditing?
What's in that file is all of your innermost secrets. When you're a Scientologist, you believe that what you're telling your counselor, your auditor, is going to be held in confidence. And in fact, the information is written down in detail in folders. Sometimes people end up with 30, 40, 50 of these folders that have all of their confessionals.
So if you shoplifted, if you lied, if you had
Everything.
sex with somebody, if you did something even worse than that, you're confessing this all during the auditing process.
Right. You are, and you're assuming that you're confessing it in confidence. But if you leave and decide to try to expose what you've discovered is really going on in Scientology, which is what I'm doing, what Jesse's doing, what various other people are doing, you quickly discover that those confessionals are only confidential as long as you're willing to maintain your loyalty to the Scientology leadership.
And never do you ever imagine that the information that you're giving in an effort is similar to other religious faiths where you give a confession and you try to change your life. Never in your wildest imagination would a person believe that now this information would be taken and given to my family, or maybe given to my employer, or given to my children, or whatever. And it's a very spiteful organization. I came to learn from my experience in the hierarchy of Scientology that Scientology truly is no church at all. It's an intelligence organization masquerading itself as a church and acting in a very mafia-like way. I mean, I've seen Miscavige have staff members held so that he could spit in their face, kick them, punch them, ranting and raving. I mean, he's a pretty much a lunatic, for lack of a better way to describe his character. But he has many different sides. But it's a very vicious organization, and I left for that very reason.
I want to get to Stacy and your story, but do we know how much money Scientology takes in every week or every year?
Well, I know when I worked in Clearwater at 210 South Fort Harrison at their establishment there, they would often send to Los Angeles $1.1 to $1.2 million a week.
And that was just from one organization.
One organization.
Stacy, why did you leave the church?
When I first got in, as I told you earlier, I was very idealistic, and I thought I was joining an organization that was going to be helping people, and that I was going to be able to have a chance to do so. I left Atlanta, which is where I lived and where I got into Scientology, and went out to Los Angeles, and quickly discovered that what I had thought I was going to join was not what was happening. In other words, I had thought I was going to become a part of a very idealistic organization whose interest was in improving the world and helping people and things like that. And what I found was people who really were not very clear about what they were doing were extremely unpleasant to each other. People were being ordered to report on each other. It was a very paranoid organization. It was very suspicious. I was suspected almost immediately of being an agent for the FBI, the IRS. I mean, this level of paranoia, which was incredible to me, simply because I didn't agree with some of the things that I saw going on, and I said so. And I quickly learned that you weren't supposed to say anything critical, because if you did, you got in trouble. So my commitment to this organization was so strong that I felt, well, it must be higher up in the organization. You know, the idealism and where people really understand what Scientology is all about, that must be higher up in the organization than I am. So I made a decision that I was going to get myself promoted all the way up to the top of Scientology so that I could really apply Scientology the way I knew it should be applied, where it would really help people and where I could start to straighten out all these things that weren't going the way I thought they should. Lower down. But by the time I ended up at the top of the organization working directly with the top leaders, I discovered that the level of corruption was incredible, that these people were extremely cynical about the fact that lower level people were believing that Scientology was really there to help people. They didn't consider that that was what they were there to do at all. They were there to take in as much money from the nonprofit church organizations as they possibly could, and they were extremely ruthless about the methods by which they went about doing that. As I told you earlier, their treatment of people just on a day-to-day basis was worse than anything I'd ever seen in my life. And so, I became extremely disillusioned, and I finally had to face the fact that the organization that I had made a commitment to did not exist, basically. These people that are in Clearwater that are basically at lower levels of organization don't know what Jesse and I are talking about, so they think that we're lying, and of course they're told that we're lying. And I run into this wherever I go when I because I always have Scientologists come out to try to harass me and try to intimidate me into not speaking out or whatever, and I try to explain to these Scientologists that the things that I'm saying really are true, and that they really need to look at the other side of things, get on the internet if they possibly can and read some of the stories of people who did get up to the higher levels and really discovered the true nature.
Do you have some of those internet addresses that you could refer people to?
Yeah, there's one called www.xenu.net. It's XENU. There's another one, www.lisamcpherson.org. That's LISAMCPHERSON.org. I think there's another one, ntheta.net, which is ENTHETA.net. And, I think it's very important for people to see the other side of this story. Lisa McPherson is a woman who died as a result of very standardly applied Scientology procedures.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Lisa was mentally unstable and in need of some professional mental health care. And instead of receiving that, she received Scientology. She was subjected to a Scientology procedure, which is the craziest thing you could ever imagine. She first was driven into a state of mind in which she really had lost her mind. As Jesse was saying, one of the really frightening aspects of Scientology is that they just the indoctrination procedures cause a person to feel that they are so bad, that they are so guilty of things, that they're responsible for everything bad that's happened to them, that they've done very bad things, and that's why their life is not going well in one way or another. Lisa was brought to a point where she was suicidal. She wished that she was dead. She was begging them to stop giving her the auditing procedures that they were giving her. They were continuing to subject her to these procedures until finally she cracked. She lost her mind. She didn't know who she was. She was in terrible shape mentally and emotionally, and she should have gone to the hospital.
Do you know of other cases where people who are members of the church were treated as Lisa McPherson was treated? Yes.
Yeah, Jesse and I both were involved in what's called the isolation watch of another individual outside of Los Angeles. And I also, and Jesse did too, both of us knew about many other people who were driven into basically psychotic episodes by the Scientology procedures, and they were subjected to the exact same treatment that Lisa was. They were held in a room. They were not allowed to leave. They were guarded 24 hours a day. They were force-fed. They had liquids forced down their throats, and they ended up with the same kinds of bruises and abrasions all over their bodies. And they were kept there until they were no longer a possible public relations threat to Scientology. And that's why Lisa was being held that way, and that's why Lisa McPherson died.
I've read a quote from L. Ron Hubbard that says that, who was the founder of the Church of Scientology, which says that if somebody decides to leave the church, that they should be audited.
Correct.
Would there be a connection between the McPherson case and that kind of auditing that L. Ron Hubbard was talking about? I bring this up because at one point, one of the reports is that Lisa McPherson called her family in Texas before she died and said that she was planning to leave the church.
Right. Well, what happens, L. Ron Hubbard says the only reason a person would leave a Scientology organization is because they've done something to that organization, or they're withholding something that they've done to the organization, and they're because they have criminal acts, they want to leave. At which point you're giving what's known as Scientology a security check, which is a list of questions of many different possible things that you have done, and you're made to hold the cans of the e-meter, and if the e-meter reacts, you're interrogated relentlessly, and I've had it for months and months on end when I wanted to leave.
What kind of interrogation? What did they ask you?
Did you break something? Did you steal from the organization? Are you withholding something about that you've done to the organization?
Are you secretly working for
the government, FBI,
the German government, whoever they happen to consider to be their current enemy?
Have you done something to David Miscavige would be a question. Have you done something to David Miscavige? Have you withheld something from him? Is there something he should know about you? These kind of...
And this questioning goes on for weeks, months?
Weeks. In my case, it went on for months. And you are literally asked, and you're asked it over and over again. They'll rephrase the same question many different ways, and it's just an exhaustive process, which really jangles the whole mental process in critical thinking, to the point where you're sitting there, God, please just let it be over at some point.
And you have to understand, when I was subjected to this kind of interrogation for months after I was sent to the prison camp for being critical of Miscavige. And this was done by two former Marines, very big, very strong men. I was locked in a room with these two people. One of them was pacing back and forth in front of me, screaming at me. And the other one was sitting, watching this little e-meter, with the dials on it and things like that, to see where my crimes were based on what these little meter needles were doing and things. And it's a terrifying situation to be in, particularly when you're not sleeping and you're not eating and you're
working all day, slaving for them. They'll make you either break rocks or
you're doing hard physical labor, and you're being interrogated like this. I mean, this is, I think the human mind is more fragile than sometimes people realize. It puts you into an extremely fragile state.
We're talking about the Church of Scientology with two people who rose to high levels within the church. Our guests are Jesse Prince and Stacy Young. They're in town because there's going to be a candlelight vigil to remember Lisa McPherson, the Scientologist who died while in church custody 3 years ago on December 5th. I want to ask you about some of the groups that the church is affiliated with or has set up. There's a group in town called the Citizens Commission on Human Rights. What's the purpose of that group, and what's its connection to Scientology?
Well, the Citizens Commission on Human Rights is there to discredit psychiatry in any way possible. The reason for this is because early on, in the early 1950s, Hubbard came out with this book, Dianetics, and it became a bestseller because it made some very exciting claims about being able to cure illnesses, make people have perfect minds, have perfect memories, whatever. And so a lot of people thought this sounded great and they got into it, but within months it began to be clear that the claims were false and that Dianetics really didn't do these things that he had claimed that it would do. And the psychiatric community came out very critically against Dianetics, saying that it was not backed up by scientific research, and that it could be dangerous. And at that point, L. Ron Hubbard, who started this thing, became furious with the psychiatric community and vowed to attack them in every way he possibly could. And psychiatry at that point became basically, as far as Hubbard was concerned, the devil. And so one of the major things that Scientology is trying to do is discredit psychiatry and do away with it, which is why they wouldn't allow Lisa McPherson to remain in the hospital when she needed to, because they didn't want her to be treated by a psychiatrist. And so CCHR basically is there to spread the word in whatever way they can about the evils of psychiatry.
Well, many times over the last few months and in fact years, the CCHR has been on this radio station talking about specifically the dangers of Ritalin, and usually go on some of the weekend talk shows here on the station, talking about Ritalin as a way to hold down the black population, to drug the black kids in our society.
Well, there's two aspects of that, and I think Jesse ought to address the aspect of the black population. But before that, I think it's important to know that I was there when this Ritalin campaign idea was thought up. It's a public relations campaign.
Is it based on any science?
No, it's not based on any science. It's based on several cases in which a child was perhaps put on Ritalin incorrectly, or perhaps didn't do well as a result of being on Ritalin. But it doesn't take into account the thousands and thousands of other children that have done well on the drug, or any of the medical studies that have been done, and written up in medical journals or whatever. This Ritalin campaign was devised as a way to get media and gain allies for the Church of Scientology. And it's that simple. That's what it was done for. It's not for the purpose of helping the children who are on Ritalin. It has nothing to do with that. Although I assure you that the people who are in CCHR fervently consider that that is what they're trying to do. The leadership of Scientology has them doing this campaign purely for the public relations value for Scientology.
And it's also ironic that they would target the African American community, because the current leader of Scientology, Dave Miscavige, is a racist and extremist, as well as his South African companion, Norman Starkey. I was the only African American that I know of that ever achieved a high position within Scientology. And even then, I was continually subjected to racial slurs by David Miscavige and Norman Starkey, to the point where we nearly came to blows about it.
What kind of racial slurs?
Nigger, dumb nigger, this kind of, constantly. L. Ron Hubbard himself is on tape giving lectures, speaking about how stupid African Americans are, and how they can't be cleared, and the best thing to do is to just put them all on the barge and dump them in the middle of the water, just kill them, genocide, as well as, other, the Arabs. And he found these people to be quite useless. So that they would put on the facade of that they even care about these people, to me, is just more of the deep deception, just another example of the deep deception and the lengths that they will go to accomplish their purpose. They don't care anything about African American people.
What would you say to African American groups in this town that are working right now with the Citizens Commission on Human Rights and the Church of Scientology?
Be very careful, because they do not care about you. If as long as they can get press about their actions because, these poor people, whatever, that is the entirety of their intent. They don't care about those people at all.
I got to ask you about this because it's the most public thing about the Church of Scientology, and that is that many well-known actors and musicians, not many, but a few well-known actors and musicians are members of the Church of Scientology and seem to function pretty well. Tom Cruise is one, and John Travolta and Chick Corea. They seem to be loyal to the church. Ann Archer, an actress. What role do these actors and musicians play in the church, and why don't these people seem to view the church the same way that you do?
Well, I can assure you that each and every one of them did at a point in time. Reason being is for the exact reason that I suffered there. They go into their counseling, they tell them their deepest dark secrets, and then the moment that they no longer want any association or want to exercise free will, they bring these things up and threaten to expose them. I know that this has happened with John Travolta. I can tell you horror stories about...
How do you know it happened with John Travolta?
Because I was personally responsible for making sure that he got counseling on a continuing basis long after he didn't want it anymore. I literally sent people from this project here on the Fort Harrison to where he lived in Florida continuously so that he could be under control, basically. And it's part of a policy that L. Ron Hubbard wrote to get celebrities in Scientology and use them as inroads into society. So on the one hand, they get this one threatening treatment, but then on the other hand, like in Tom Cruise's case, they will go through incredible lengths to appease these people and satisfy them, to the point where they actually Tom Cruise had a fantasy prior to marrying Nicole Kidman that he would just love to run through a meadow of tall grass and flowers, and that was just a fantasy of his. Well, guess what? The prison, the Scientology prison, worked day and night to cultivate an entire meadow, get all the rocks, clean it out, plant grass, plant flowers, till it got to a certain height, and then Tom Cruise was invited out to the facility so that him and Nicole Kidman could run through the meadow. Well, little do they know they were running on the blood and sweat of people that had their wills decimated to the point where they were nearly robotic. I wonder how they feel about that.
Have there been other deaths, do you think, within the Church of Scientology besides that of Lisa McPherson?
I know there have been. A very dear friend of mine named Roxanne Friend died recently. As far as I'm concerned, it was very clearly a result of the Scientology procedures that she was subjected to. She had an experience pretty similar to Lisa McPherson's, which she lived through, but later it was discovered that she had cancer, which Scientology had forbidden her to have treated medically because they wanted her to treat it with auditing. And by the time she was able to escape from her guards, who were keeping her in Clearwater in an apartment, and get up to her parents and get to a doctor, it was too late and the cancer was inoperable.
Does Scientology make the claim that auditing can cure diseases?
Scientology doesn't make the claim publicly because that would be practicing medicine without a license. But they certainly claim it privately, and they certainly tell their parishioners that if there's anything wrong with them physically, they need auditing to correct it.
A few years ago, and Jesse, you alluded to this, in the late 1970s and early 1980s, it was pretty well known that Scientology was at war with the government. It had hired people to infiltrate the government and all that.
Right.
It's now often said by church leaders that those days are behind it. That the church has reformed itself. It no longer engages in law breaking, and the people that were involved in the law breaking were rogues, and that there are not. I read one report several years ago that federal judges were tailed by members of the Church of Scientology so that the church could get the goods on the judges and blackmail them so that they would come out with the right opinion. But those days, according to church officials, are behind it.
No, that's very far from the truth. As a matter of fact, one thing that keeps the hierarchy of Scientology in such a vicious state is that you are literally required to do criminal acts, be involved in criminal acts. I myself have been involved in electronic bugging, ordered to do electronic bugging, destroying court evidence that's been asked for by the courts. And then you're made to do this and you make other people do it. Therefore, we're all culpable. So we have to stay here and we have to do this because, we're doing this, but we're getting paid. The hierarchy of Scientology is paid much better than, these guys breaking rocks making $5 a week. And so there's this agreement that, okay, well, we're all doing these criminal things. And I was doing this up until 1987. So, and that's 10 years after 1977 raid when the FBI went in and discovered, hey, look what they do. So 10 years later, we're doing the exact same things. People are being beat up. People are being bugged. People are false reports. People are getting fired from their jobs because private investigators are hired, sent in to give disinformation.
People are being harassed relentlessly.
And as I said, as I sit here now, private investigators are calling my family, telling them lies, masquerading as the police, saying we're the police. He jumped bail as we sit here. So no, nothing's changed.
Stacey, have you been harassed?
I've been harassed since 1993 when I first decided to speak out publicly. My husband and I both have been harassed terribly. And just this morning, I was told that one of the cats in our cat sanctuary has been poisoned. And I'm hoping that she's going to be okay. But a year ago...
what makes you think Scientology was involved in that?
Because of the pattern of harassment that has happened up until this point. Scientology knows that these animals are very important to me, and they go after whatever is important to a critic to try and back them off. A year ago...
They picket your house, too.
They picket my house.
Constantly.
Constantly. They follow me everywhere I go. They're waiting for me at my gate when I get off of an airplane. I have no idea how they know where I am. The other morning when I was leaving to go see my family at Thanksgiving, they were waiting on the other side of Puget Sound when I got off the ferry to picket and pass out leaflets of unbelievable character assassination about me.
What do you think the ultimate goal of the Church of Scientology is?
Make money, make more money. That's what L. Ron Hubbard says.
Well, and to take over. Their stated purpose is to clear the planet, quote unquote. What that means is for every single person in the world to become a Scientologist. And that is what they are working on 24 hours a day. With their recruitment, with their slick public image, with all of the different front groups that they have that are calculated to get people into Scientology before they realize what they're getting into. All of this is calculated to bring in more and more members of the Church of Scientology so that ultimately Scientology will be able to control entire population.
L. Ron Hubbard's former deputy at sea, a woman whose name I can't recall right now, was quoted one time as saying that Hubbard's entire objective was to find a place that Hubbard could eventually turn into his own kingdom.
That's Hannah Whitfield.
With his own government, his own passports, his own monetary system, that he would be the benign dictator of.
Yeah, there's a whole tape called International City in which he lays out the plan for piloting the first Scientology government. And once they sort of ironed out the bugs in one city, they'll start exporting it to other cities, and they'll start taking over.
Do they have?
And that's what they want to do in Clearwater. It's very clear.
Is that their plan for Clearwater?
Yes.
Of course it is.
So they have a very slick image. They seem very nice, very personable. But you know what's odd? A person commented to me that lives in Clearwater that you can almost instantly recognize a Scientologist, especially a serial member, because when they're not at the Fort Harrison and they're just within society, they have the saddest look. They're gaunt. They have dark circles under their eyes, and they're exhausted.
Well, I don't think there's much more we can say right now. Stacy Young and Jesse Prince, thanks a lot for coming down. There is going to be a candlelight vigil to remember Lisa McPherson. Where's that vigil going to take place? I understand that you're having trouble finding sidewalk space for this vigil.
Well, it was actually just recently resolved. And there will actually be a protest in front of the Fort Harrison between Court and Pierce on this coming Saturday, December 5th, between 3 and 6 p.m. And then on Sunday, December 6th, between 3 and 6 p.m., there'll be another protest. Saturday, December 5th at 7 p.m. is when the candlelight vigil for Lisa McPherson is going to be held, and it'll be outside the Peace Memorial Presbyterian Church at South Fort Harrison and Pierce.
All right. And again, those websites for people that want to find out more about the Church of Scientology?
One of them is www.lisamcpherson.org. That's LISAMCPHERSON. And then another one is www.xenu.net, XENU. And another one is www.ntheta.net, ENTHETA.
All right. There's a whole lot more that I'd like to talk about, but we don't have time. We're out of time. Thank you very much for coming down. Jesse Prince and Stacy Young, thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having us.
I'm Rob Lorei. Thanks for listening. This is 88.5 FM, WMNF, Tampa, St. Petersburg.
Rob Lorei was a great guy on the radio and a nice guy in person. He did multiple shows on Scientology, including having Jamie DeWolf on a show, along with Mike Krotz, who was doing a kind of fundraiser benefit concert in Clearwater way back when the LMT was in town to try to keep the LMT solvent. And that was a great event. And it was the first time I had a chance to meet Jamie DeWolf, who was a lot of fun. Got a lot of footage of him from Clearwater, and also sat down and did an interview with him later on in I forget which city, San Francisco, probably somewhere around there. But that was years later. Rob Lorei, I remember there was something called, what was the name of that? Somebody here was organizing a multi-day event where they invited in people like Russell Miller to talk, and John Sweeney was part of it, and a number of really big people talking about Scientology here in Clearwater. But the woman who was one of the people behind it was a little wacky, and she banned me and Rob Lorei from attending. And we thought, well, this is silly. I mean, this is open to the public. Why can't we just go and see the event? And we showed up, and she had the police escort us off the property, which turned into, something far more major than if we had just been allowed to go in and sit down and listen to the people talk. And then they, eventually she got ousted off of that position, and everything was retooled. Apparently, there was not a lot of careful planning for this event. What was it called? Stand Down? Something like that. She had she had rented this big hall for it, but it was not a good place for speakers. And eventually they just abandoned that and rented a room at one of the hotels on the beach here. And that worked out nicely. It was filled with people, and I was allowed to attend. So that was nice. Anyway, I appreciate all of you coming here to listen to this with me. Jamie DeWolf is a hoot, says Kelly. And Lupita asks, my thoughts on meeting him, Mark? Well, I thought he was a hoot. he was a very young guy when he first came to Clearwater. I remember him when he arrived at the Lisa McPherson Trust, and it was actually kind of sweet, because here's a guy who, in his poetry, in his activism, is very in your face and counterculture. But he got on the phone to his mom, and he was just the sweetest guy, letting his mom know that he was fine. He was here in Clearwater, and there's no problem. This is the first time that he showed his face dealing with Scientology, and his entire family had avoided taking on Scientology for the longest time. His mom was terribly worried that this was going to open up him to some really terrific pushback from Scientology. And I think he's handled it well. But, he was a very polite, very nice guy when I met him. And he remained, I've seen him a few times since then. He's always been a terrific guy, and always willing to sit down and do an interview with me. So I have nothing but great things to say about Jamie DeWolf, then known as Jamie Kennedy. And it's really bizarre. It's such a coincidence that this Jamie Kennedy that we know, Jamie DeWolf, looks pretty much like the actor Jamie Kennedy, who had a TV show at the time, Jamie Kennedy Experiment, was it? Something like that. But they were both these thin, redheaded guys that looked very similar. So Jamie decided to change his name to his mother's family name, DeWolf, much like Grandpa did, where L. Ron Jr. became Ron DeWolf. And the other thing I remember, I was dating a woman who was very impressed by Jamie as well. And I won't go into anything more about that. Nothing that would make me feel terribly jealous, but there you go. Jamie seemed always ready to party. Well, yeah. He's a multitude of things. He's very talented. He's done a remarkable job of building this entire scene with his live stage shows, his poetry reading, his all of these events are pretty nicely done. Flag down. There you go. Flag down. What was let's see. I started a couple things up here that people are asking about. Well, JB808 was wondering, when a Scientologist drops their body, dies, do they need to be OT8 in order to pick up a clear body in their next life? Well, it seemed like it would help, but it doesn't seem like the Thetan normally requires that, does it? I mean, because there have been Thetans for, millennium, ever since Xenu blew us up in a volcano. And there were not courses to go up the bridge to OT8 before. And these Thetans always were able to, find another baby body to go into and be born again. I think the advantage, if you are up the bridge and you're OT8, well, that just means that when you come back the next time in the next baby's body and you report back into Scientology at the age of 21, well, you can start right where you left off. So that's my understanding, and I'm an outsider here. So I'm sure there are people with far more knowledge about this than I have. Here's the other part. I don't know if this was put up on the screen or not. And if they aren't OT8 when they die, would they pick up the body of another Thetan and have to start over from the beginning to reach clear again? Sounds like never-ending torture to me. Well, just sitting through one L. Ron Hubbard lecture is never-ending torture to me. I mean, good God, I don't know how Scientologists can devote all of their time to listening to the recorded lectures of L. Ron Hubbard and reading all of the nonsense that he wrote. That is torture. Anna Banana says Lisa's story is such a sad one, which is absolutely true. But what impressed me the most is that Anna Banana seems to be at the comms on the bridge of a Starfleet ship. And I appreciate that. It's nice to have you here back in the 21st century. Or something like that. Anyway, I like the picture there, Anna. All you folks who joined us here, let me come back to the live comments. I really appreciate you all coming by. The Lori McMullen has some information here for me. The woman who had you kicked out lived near Tarpon Springs. She wore a long black tunic with long black sleeves. Odd lady. Well, people can have differences with me. It just doesn't seem right, though, if, people that I've met before, like John Sweeney, I'd like to say hi to him, and I hadn't met Russell Miller before, so I thought it would be nice to attend. And what was I going to do? Throw over the tables and demand to speak? It's just nonsense. Anyway, I do not wish any ill will toward that woman, because I think this was the end of her activities with these type of things after they kind of said, we could probably do this better without you. JB 808 is appreciating my response, my amateurish response to picking up a new body if you're not OT8, and is going to ask Tori. Tori would have much more of the inside poop. My poop is still inside for the most part. When I see LRH, all I can focus on is his rotten teeth. Don't hear anything he is saying. I understand that. So gross. So true. I wonder, asks 49ers fan for life, I wonder if any high-level Scientologists wonder about the origin of Xenu. Well, what's to wonder? He was an intergalactic overlord and he blew us up in a volcano. Somehow he reached power. It's the same way that somehow we have somebody in power now who has just managed to pass a bill through Congress that is going to strip Medicaid away from millions of people. And so if that can happen, Xenu can happen. You just never know when a strong man's going to take charge. I try so hard not to be political here. I tell you, I try, but it's so frustrating. And nice of you. JB808 says he appreciates and respects my poop. Thank you. Okay. So an ad popped up. Is that what happened on YouTube? Did they interrupt it to play an ad? Oh, that drives me nuts. Those ads are important, people. Daddy's got bills to pay. But I hate ads in streaming channels, not just here in YouTube, but if you're watching any free type of stream where they're saying, hey, here's a TV show you might want to watch, and right in the middle of a sentence, it will cut to a commercial. And if you could you wait for a break, like a commercial break, and then play the commercials? And, I remember watching, before Monty Python, the folks who formed Monty Python had two different shows. There were team members split onto two different shows. One was a grown-up satirical show on the BBC, and the other was a kids show. Same type of silly sketch comedy. And the guys from Python on the adult show used to stop everything and watch the kids show and said, hey, these guys are good. So they came together then, members of both teams, to form Monty Python. And here was one of were episodes of that kids show that I'd never seen before, streaming on Plex. Okay, let me take a look. And you get in the middle of a sketch and it goes to a commercial. It's like, oh God, I can't take it. I can't take it. But by all means, watch the commercials on my channel, because I need it. Anyway, hey, speaking of watching things, this is the part of the broadcast where I ramble on and on about some things that I just watched on TV and at the movies. And really, the only thing I can think of right now is over the weekend I went to see Final Destination Bloodlines. And I got to say, it was fun. I remember seeing the first Final Destination when it came out decades ago and thought, it's okay. And I think I probably tried watching another one and went, that one's not okay, and didn't watch any of the others. But this one's been getting such great reviews that I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot. And I'm glad I did. If you like wacky horror films with humorous deaths, they find the most creative ways to kill people in this film, one after another. And I appreciate that. There are films like The Monkey. I don't know if you saw The Monkey. The Monkey is a lot of fun. Just demented ways to kill people. But not in a sick, nasty way. In more of a, wow, that was kind of funny what they did. If it was just bloody, taking an axe and whacking somebody, I hate that type of stuff. But anytime they have something supernatural where it's, and especially when they bring the humor into it, yes, it is another sequel. It is not called Final Destination, although they're going to go on now. They better use that. If they don't use that, they're making a mistake. Now, Final Destination Bloodlines, and it's about this one. I'm not going to give you anything away that you wouldn't see in a trailer. It's about this one family who escaped death at this event at the beginning of the film that involves something like the Space Needle in Seattle. And then all the descendants are still on the hook for the person surviving this tragedy. And, I think you can actually see it streaming now as well. But I need some recommendations for some good horror thriller movies. I'm not into all the gore either. I've mentioned, besides this one, The Monkey is fun. Now there's gore, but it's creative, fun gore. It's not the type of. I don't know if you ever watched The Boys, the superhero show on Amazon, but they're doing creative ways to kill people left and right that you just go, oh my Lord, that are just bizarrely inventive. Here's an earlier example. If you ever saw Reanimator, it's a horror film, and they do a lot of gross out effects, but it with a sense of humor. And that's the type of thing I appreciate when it's done well. Sinners is incredible, says 49ers fan for life, and you are correct. I absolutely loved that film, and I had no idea. As I watched the entire thing, I had no idea that the two main brothers were played by the same actor. That damn good. It was only after I was reading about it afterwards. What? That's it. Wow. I mean, that was really impressive. Not just differentiating between the two brothers, but technically it was seamless. I want to see that. And I saw season 1 and 2 of The Boys. I like their mock of Scientology. Yes, they did do that as well. There's one film that I loved last year that it really feels like a Stephen King film, but it is not. It is a film from a story by Stephen King's son, Joe Hill. But it really plays out like one. It's called The Black Phone, I think was the name of it. And that was really atmospheric, and I thought it was a terrific movie. There's a sequel coming out to it now, and I've seen the trailer for it in the theaters, and I'm wondering, why do you need a sequel to this? It doesn't seem like a film that should have a sequel, or you're really stretching it. But I'll probably give it a shot because the first one was so damn good. And we're 11 days away from Superman. And, I've told my doctor, I went in for a doctor's appointment today. I said, doctor, you got to keep me alive for at least 11 more days. If I drop dead before Superman opens, I'm going to be haunting the movie theaters. That is my pledge to moviegoers everywhere. If somebody's haunting the theater, it'll be me. Lordy. But Sinners is such a good film. Even if it hadn't been a horror film, the world that they created and the story they created about these brothers coming back to start a nightclub in their hometown, essentially, all the characters in it were so great, and the atmosphere was so great that even if there hadn't been a supernatural element to it, I would have loved that film. But I recommend that one. So thanks for that suggestion. I got to say, 49ers fan for life. I never saw that first Happy Gilmore. I have not been a big Adam Sandler fan, although I've got it, and I'm going to watch it at some point. Do we need a Happy Gilmore 2? Probably not. What's the other sequel that is being made? Seems like there's a film that I love, and they're doing a sequel to that. And it's like, you're risking it. Sometimes you're better off, leaving your memories intact. Oh, wait a minute. Was it Groundhog Day 2? It's kind of hard to tell nowadays because the AI is so great. You can create these trailers that look like they're for a real film, and they're not. And I thought that was the case when I saw the trailer for the new Jurassic World film, or Jurassic Park, whatever it is, with Scarlett Johansson. The first trailer that I saw online had no dialogue. It was just, creatures and Scarlett. And so I thought, oh, okay, this is AI. They couldn't do any dialogue for it. So it's like, and then it turns out to be a real movie. But it's kind of hard to tell. Kelly shilling for me, and I appreciate that, Kelly. Affordable membership packages, fits everybody's budget. Become a member, and we next weekend let's do a members only movie and TV thing. I think we can just talk about all the movies possible. John Wick is a good one. John Wick is I like John Wick. I haven't seen Ballerina, but I saw all 4 of the John Wick films, and I thought those were terrific. And I tell you, I really enjoyed. And I'm not a huge fan of fights and, but I thought the John Wick fights were very creative and inventive. And then the people behind that made Nobody with the guy from Better Call Saul, whose name escapes me because I'm old. But I love them, and I went to see that and really enjoyed that film enormously. And they're doing a sequel to that now, and I look at the sequel and go, really? Yeah, okay. The first one was a nice surprise. I think you're risking it, but I'll be there. Hollywood killed a lot of old franchises. They let politics take over. Which franchises are those? You have not seen AI being used for trailers? Oh my Lord. There's a cottage industry of people who are making, especially these like 1950s versions of current movies. What would the Jetsons have looked like if it had been made in the 1950s as a live action film? And they have the same. In fact, somebody put a tutorial out there of how I make these trailers, suggesting these are the filters you want to use. These are the services. Here's where you can create the narration track to it. So if you look for Super CinemaScope trailers, I was watching a whole bunch of things yesterday. You get caught into this death spiral where they keep feeding you more and more stuff. What was there was a Justice League of America movie starring stars of the 60s. So you'd had like Sean Connery as Batman, something like that, and James Garner as Superman. So they show you the actor, and it looks very realistic. And one made me applaud. Who are the other people I can think of offhand? Robert Redford as Aquaman. But the one that really surprised and delighted me was Mary Tyler Moore as Lois Lane. And oh my God, how perfect is that? And there's Mary sitting in the Daily Planet, very realistic. So I'm amazed by these things. And then there were these YouTube shorts where somebody's making these videos, runway videos, where you're taking all the actors who've played Batman over the decades, and they're walking down the runway side by side with, them in regular clothes or a tux or whatever, and then the Batman outfit. And one after another, they had like, videos made for Wonder Woman and Superman and all these kind of things. I tell you, you get stuck, and that's the addictive property of all of these channels out there. Wick is one of the few movies that didn't get ruined by sequels. I have not seen Ballerina. I'm not really that interested in Ballerina from the world of John Wick, but I had a friend who saw it and loved it. I saw Fantastic Four poster, has 6 fingers in it. That is something to talk about. I'd be surprised about that, but maybe if it's Mr. Terrific, he can just create another finger. I didn't know they were using AI to make trailers. There are people using AI to make everything nowadays. Bob Odenkirk. God bless you. Yeah, I love Bob Odenkirk. Let's see. I'm looking back here. Haggis Basher says, I used to have a show. There used to be a show when he was a wee that was called Monkey, about mythological creatures taking Buddha to a sacred place. Yeah, I think that's the Monkey King. I've never seen any of this, but there have been a lot of projects based on the Monkey King over the years. And nice to see you, Haggis Basher. I got a message from Kelly the other day pointing me to your website, and I'd like to show that to folks here. Let me share the screen. There we go. I just share the screen, and Survivor Stories. Kaboom. And let me come back here and kaboom it onto this channel. So remove that. And
have Joy Vila. How are you doing, Joy?
I'm doing so good. I can't believe I'm here. This is pretty extraordinary.
there, if you would. And we've got Paulette's testimony from the 1982 Clearwater hearings. So check that out. Why don't you? All right. Well, I'm glad I could bring that to your attention. Thank you, Haggis Basher, for putting that together. It's a great resource. There's no sound if I played. Uh-oh. Did you, when I took myself off the screen, did you stop hearing me? Oy, oy, oy. Well, can you hear me now? Oh, geez. Well, I'm sorry about that. Well, so what I was saying is head on over to this website. In case I did not give out, or you didn't hear me give out the site, it's victimshavevoices.com. Could you hear me then? Victimshavevoices.com. And let me see if, okay. Let me just post that link in here as well. Although I've had trouble posting, let's give it a shot. YouTube has been censoring some of my posts here, but that one came through. Okay, good. No, you didn't hear that? All right. Well, I think let's see. Lori's saying, before we leave, any updates on the lawsuit with Dr. Minkoff? Nothing that I'm aware of. I don't think there's been much news from it. I went to what was supposed to be a follow-up hearing back at that same judge's office. And I showed up there for the hearing and got to the fourth floor of the courthouse where it was supposed to be taking place. And the police stopped me, police working the security there, at the scanner. They said, what case you going to? And I told them, and they said, oh, that's been canceled. So I just had to turn around. That's the last that I have heard about it. Not that the case has been canceled, but that particular hearing on throwing out the lawsuit was canceled, rescheduled, I'm sure. All right. So we've listened to a lovely radio show, and I've babbled on and on about movies and TV. I think it's probably a good time to call it a night. And I will be back, I'm sure tomorrow. Maybe I'll play some highlights of my conversation with Joy. Head on over to Joy's channel tomorrow at 5 p.m. Florida time to hear our chat. And I've got other things lined up for the rest of the week here. So I will see you then. Lots of fun stuff coming. Some stuff you've seen before, some stuff that's brand new to everybody. Everybody, yep, Joy Vila tomorrow, 5 p.m. over at Joy's channel. It'll be Joy and Wise Beard Man, trying not to come to blows over politics. I'm going to try to be really nice. Any upcoming episodes with recent birthday gal, Bunky and Magoo? We don't have anything lined up yet, but I have to get her online and do another one of those. We talked the other night as I was ferrying people around for Uber in between rides. We had a brief conversation. So we'll schedule another one of those soon. Until then, I appreciate everybody coming by here. Don't forget, like, subscribe, share, hop up and down and tell everybody you know, hey, check out Wise Beard Man. I appreciate it all. And of course, you'll probably want to, how can you live without a Wise Beard Man cap or t-shirt or a mug. There's a store open just for that. Anyway, it's been fun sharing time with you, and I will see you again soon. Bye.
What are your crimes, Mark? Yes, what are your crimes, Mark? Your crimes are hidden, they should be seen. Spin all out, Mark, and just come clean.